Imagine, for a moment, that you're a spoiled princess and you've made a rash promise to a talking frog. Now this slimy green creature shows up at your opulent castle, demanding to eat from your golden plate and sleep in your silk-lined bed. And your father, the king, looks at you and says, "A promise is a promise." What do?
Oh, the horror! I mean, seriously, a frog in the royal bedchamber? Talk about a social faux pas, right? It's enough to make you want to, well, we'll get to that part in the story. It's truly shocking, and it really sets the stage for today's tale.
Exactly. Welcome, everyone, to Forgotten Tales, the podcast where we dust off the ancient scrolls, crack open the leather-bound books, and bring to life the magic, the mystery, and the sometimes surprisingly dark lessons from the Brothers Grimm. Hans Christian Andersen, 1001 Nights, and so many more timeless collections.
I'm Ashley, and joining me as always is the wonderful Echo, ready to weave us into another enchanting narrative. Today, we're diving into a story that many know in part, but fewer know in full, especially its often overlooked, yet incredibly poignant ending. We're talking about The Frog Prince, or King Frog, but a very important version includes Iron Henry.
That's right. It's a tale steeped in themes of promises, appearances, and the true meaning of loyalty. And honestly, it's one of those stories that, when you peel back the layers, reveals so much about societal expectations and personal growth.
It really is. The version most people are familiar with usually focuses on the princess and the frog, but the Iron Henry part adds such a beautiful, heartbreaking, and ultimately heartwarming dimension that truly elevates the entire narrative. It gives it a depth of emotional resonance that you don't always expect from a simple fairy tale.
So, let's set the scene. Once upon a time, in a grand kingdom far away, lived a princess. Now this wasn't just any princess. She was beautiful, certainly, but also quite accustomed to getting her own way. Her most prized possession was a golden ball, which she loved to toss high into the air and catch.
Classic princess, right? Gold, beautiful, a little bit pampered. You can almost picture her, sitting by the castle well, probably sighing dramatically as she plays.
One day, while playing by an old, dark well in the palace garden, she tossed her golden ball higher than usual. And alas, instead of coming back down into her waiting hands, it bounced, rolled, and plunged deep into the dark, murky waters of the well. The princess, naturally, burst into tears. She wailed and sobbed, inconsolable over her lost treasure.
Which, for a golden ball is a pretty extreme reaction. But it highlights her attachment to material things, and maybe her youthful inability to handle even minor setbacks gracefully. Suddenly a voice croaked, "What troubles you, princess? You weep so bitterly that it would move a stone to pity."
She looked around, startled, and saw a large, ugly frog poking its head out of the water, its big, bulging eyes fixed on her.
And this is where things get interesting. A talking animal emerging from the depths is a classic trope in folklore, often representing a hidden helper or a magical being disguised, ready to test the protagonist's character or offer a pact. The princess explained her predicament, still sniffling. The frog, in its deep, croaking voice, said, "I can retrieve your ball for you, but what will you give me in return?" The princess, desperate, replied, "Anything you wish, dear frog. My pearls, my jewels, my fine clothes, even my golden crown." Notice how she immediately offers material possessions? Her initial instinct isn't to think about a non-tangible promise, but to try and buy her way out. It's a very telling detail about her character at this point.
But the frog merely shook its head. "I want none of your pearls or jewels or fine clothes or golden crown. But if you will love me, and let me be your companion and playfellow, and sit by you at your table, and eat from your little golden plate, and sleep in your little bed, if you will promise me this, I will dive down and bring you your golden ball."
Whoa, that's a huge ask. For a young, probably squeamish princess, the idea of a frog sharing her plate and bed, that's a whole different level of commitment than just handing over some jewels. The princess, without a moment's hesitation, thought,
"What silly talk from a foolish frog. He can only live in the water with his fellow frogs. He can't possibly be a companion to a human." So she readily agreed. Yes, I promise you everything you ask, if only you will bring me back my ball."
And there's the rub. A promise given lightly, with no real intention of keeping it. This is really the core conflict of the story, the integrity of one's word. She sees the frog as beneath her, not worthy of her commitment.
With her promise secured, the frog dipped its head, dove deep into the well, and after a short while, resurfaced with the gleaming golden ball in its mouth. It tossed the ball onto the grass, and the princess, overjoyed, snatched it up and ran off, completely forgetting the frog and her solemn promise.
Typical. Out of sight, out of mind. The immediate gratification of getting her toy back completely overrides any sense of obligation. It shows her immaturity for sure.
But the frog was not so easily forgotten. The next day, as the princess sat at dinner with her father, the king, and all his courtiers, a plip-plop sound was heard on the marble stairs. Then, a knock at the door, and a voice croaked, "Open the door, king's daughter. Open the door for your true love."
Oh, that's just priceless. Imagine the shock and horror on her face. And the sheer audacity of the frog calling himself her true love is quite cheeky, I think.
The princess, aghast, ran to the door, pulled it open, and there, to her absolute horror, was the frog. She slammed the door shut and rushed back to the table, trembling. The king, noticing her distress, asked, "My child, what frightens you so? Is there a giant at the door?"
Her reaction is so visceral. It's not just annoyance, it's genuine disgust and fear of having to confront her broken promise. The frog represents everything she wants to avoid.
"Oh no, dear father," she whispered. "It's no giant, but a hideous frog I met yesterday at the well. It helped me retrieve my golden ball, and in return, I foolishly promised it could be my companion. I never imagined it would leave the well."
The classic, "I didn't really mean it" defense. But here's where the king steps in, and his role is absolutely pivotal in the traditional interpretation of this story.
Just then, another knock came, and the frog's voice called out again. "King's daughter, youngest, open the door for your true love. Remember what you promised by the well water clear." The king, a wise and just man, heard this and declared, "What you have promised, you must perform. Go and let him in."
This is such a crucial moment. The king, representing authority and moral law, insists on upholding the promise. In those times, a king's word, and by extension, a princess's word, had to be inviolable. It wasn't just about personal integrity, it was about the honor of the entire royal house. Obedience to one's father was also a huge virtue.
Reluctantly, the princess opened the door, and the frog hopped straight in, following her back to the table. "Lift me up beside you," it croaked. The princess recoiled. The king, however, sternly commanded, "If he sat with you by the well, he must sit with you at table."
Poor princess, right? Forced to sit next to this slimy creature. The discomfort is palpable, but it's also a lesson in humility, pushing her out of her pampered bubble.
So, the princess had to lift the frog onto her chair, and then, "Now push your little golden plate nearer to me, so that we may eat together." The princess did so, but with great reluctance, and she saw the frog eating with relish while she could barely swallow a bite.
It's a vivid image, isn't it? The contrast between her delicate meal and the frog devouring his food. It emphasizes the jarring nature of her predicament and her initial repulsion.
Finally, the frog declared, "I am tired, and I would like to sleep. Now lift me into your little room, and then put me into your little bed." The princess shuddered at the thought, but her father's stern gaze left her no choice. So, she picked up the cold, clammy frog with 2 fingers, carried it to her room, and placed it on her pillow.
This is the ultimate test, isn't it? The bed is such an intimate space, and having a frog there is the height of discomfort and a violation of her personal boundaries, even if she promised. It's designed to push her to her absolute limit.
But the frog, far from settling in, jumped up and said, "I want to sleep as well as you do. Lift me up or I will tell your father." This was the last straw. The princess, absolutely furious and disgusted, grabbed the frog with all her might and hurled it against the wall, crying, "Now you will have your rest, you nasty frog."
Bang! What a moment. That explosive reaction is so human, isn't it? After all the forced politeness and compliance, she just snaps. It's a raw, almost violent outburst that really shows her character breaking through her royal facade.
But as the frog hit the wall, something miraculous happened. It didn't splat or croak. Instead, when it fell to the bed, it was no longer a frog. Before her stood a handsome prince, with kind eyes and a gentle smile, looking at her with a knowing gaze.
The classic transformation. This is a pivotal fairy tale moment, the physical revulsion leading to a magical release. In many interpretations, this act of throwing the frog isn't just an outburst, it's seen as the princess finally confronting her disgust, and in a strange way breaking the enchantment herself, by fully engaging with the situation, albeit violently.
He explained that he had been bewitched by a wicked witch, condemned to live as a frog until a princess would show him kindness and allow him to be her companion. By breaking the enchantment, she had freed him. And, as you might guess, with the king's blessing, they soon married.
A classic fairy tale ending, right? But wait, there's more. This is where the Iron Henry part of the story comes in, and it's truly beautiful. It's a subplot that often gets left out of modern retellings, but it adds so much heart.
Indeed. The very next morning, a magnificent carriage arrived at the palace, drawn by 8 white horses, adorned with golden feathers and shining harness. And on the back, standing proudly, was the young prince's faithful servant, Old Henry.
Henry, or Iron Henry as he's known, is a testament to unwavering loyalty. He's not just a servant, he's a representation of deep devotion and emotional burden carried for his master.
When his dear master had been transformed into a frog, the loyal Henry had been so distraught, so filled with grief, that he had 3 iron bands forged around his heart. He did this to prevent his heart from breaking entirely from sorrow.
Isn't that just the most poignant image? 3 bands of iron, physically constraining a heart bursting with grief and concern for his beloved prince. It perfectly illustrates the depth of his despair and the emotional weight he carried.
As the carriage carried the newlywed prince and princess away to his own kingdom, the prince heard a series of loud cracks from the back of the carriage. "What was that noise?" he asked. "Was the carriage breaking?"
The anticipation here is wonderful. You know something significant is happening, but the prince is oblivious to the cause.
Old Henry called out, "No, my master, it was not the carriage, it was the iron bands around my heart. 2 of them have just sprung from joy, because my master is now free and happy."
Oh, my heart! The first 2 bands breaking from sheer relief and happiness. It's such a powerful symbol of his emotional burden being lifted. It's almost more impactful than the princess's story in some ways, because it's so purely about love and devotion.
And as they continued their journey, another loud crack was heard. "And that was the 3rd band," cried Henry, his voice filled with pure delight. "My heart is now free and light, for my prince is a prince once more, and truly happy."
And that's the end of the story. The breaking of the 3 iron bands, one by one, signifies the complete release of Henry's sorrow and the overwhelming joy of seeing his master restored. It's an incredibly moving coda that highlights loyalty, the power of hope, and the ripple effect of one person's happiness on another.
What a beautiful addition to a story that many only know in its shortened form. Right, it truly changes the emotional landscape of the tale, from just a princess's transformation to a broader narrative about devotion and shared joy.
Absolutely. It's why I think the Iron Henry title is so important for certain versions. It elevates his character from a background figure to someone whose loyalty is deeply felt and beautifully depicted.
So, let's talk about the moral of this story. What do you think the Brothers Grimm were trying to tell their audiences back in the day?
Well, primarily, it's about keeping your word. A promise is sacred, regardless of how lightly it was given or how distasteful the circumstances become. The king's insistence on his daughter honoring her promise is central to this. It's about integrity, duty, and obedience to authority.
And also, the classic, "Don't judge a book by its cover," or, in this case, "Don't judge a prince by his froggy exterior." True value, true character, might be hidden beneath an unappealing facade. You have to look beyond appearances.
Definitely. It teaches perseverance in the face of unpleasantness. The princess had to go through that very uncomfortable experience, and only through that did she achieve the positive outcome. It suggests that challenges are necessary for transformation.
But how does that moral translate to our modern world? Because honestly, if my dad told me I had to let a talking frog sleep in my bed, I'd have a few choice words for him about boundaries and consent.
Exactly. The context completely shifts. While keeping promises is still a virtue, the idea of being forced into an uncomfortable situation for the sake of a promise is problematic today. We'd emphasize the importance of communication, renegotiation, and respecting personal space.
I mean, the princess was quite literally coerced by her father. So, while the outcome is good in the fairy tale sense, the process is something we'd probably critique today. We'd talk about her agency or lack thereof.
Right. However, the looking beyond appearances and personal growth through challenge aspects still hold up beautifully. It's about overcoming your own prejudices and discomfort to see the true worth in others, or even to unlock your own potential. The princess grows from being spoiled and superficial to someone who, however grudgingly, fulfills her obligations and in doing so frees herself and the prince.
And the Iron Henry part, for me, really stands the test of time. Loyalty, empathy, and the profound impact one person's well-being has on another. That's a universal message that transcends eras.
It truly does. It reminds us that stories aren't just about the main characters. They're about the entire ecosystem of relationships and emotions that surround them. The joy of a loyal heart being unburdened is just as powerful as the princess's happy ending.
Well, what a journey into the world of frogs, princes, and loyal hearts. Thank you for joining us today on Forgotten Tales.
It's always a pleasure to dive into these timeless stories with you all. There's always so much more to uncover beneath the surface, isn't there?
Indeed. Join us next time for another enchanting tale from the Brothers Grimm, Hans Christian Andersen, or perhaps the Arabian Nights.
And if you enjoyed this episode, please do us a huge favor, like this episode, subscribe to Forgotten Tales, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming adventures. Share it with a friend who loves a good story too.
Until next time, keep those tales alive in your heart. Farewell.
Bye everyone!